My name is Emily Carter, and today should have felt ordinary. But somehow it didn't. The sunlight spilled across my silk blouse as I leaned against the window of my downtown apartment, the city humming below like it didn't have a care in the world. My phone buzzed again, another reminder from some automated calendar. My birthday. My forgotten birthday. For 10 years, I had orchestrated every single detail of my sister's birthdays. Balloons, cakes, themed parties that looked like they belonged in a magazine. And yet, year after year, my own birthday would slip by unnoticed, while I smiled through the celebrations I had meticulously planned for her. The irony didn't escape me. I felt the familiar sting in my chest, that lump that had grown heavier with every ignored candle and forgotten card. I adjusted the sleeve of my blouse, the soft silk brushing against my skin, and let out a quiet sigh. It wasn't bitterness, not exactly. I had learned to carry it differently, like a secret strength tucked inside me. But today, something was different. A small text popped up from my mother. "Are you doing anything special today?" And for the first time in years, I felt a strange mix of resentment and possibility. I ran my hand over the polished surface of my desk and caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror across the room. The reflection staring back was calm, poised, successful, composed. But beneath that polished exterior was a fire I had kept hidden. Today, that fire whispered, "Maybe this year I won't plan for anyone else. Maybe this year I would finally make my birthday unforgettable." I remember the first time it really hurt. I was 12, standing in our cramped kitchen with my carefully wrapped present clutched in my hands, while my parents fussed over my sister, Lily, decorating her birthday cupcakes with more care than they ever gave me. I had spent hours drawing her a card, folding tiny paper cranes for her table, and yet, when my own birthday came a week later, it was like I had disappeared. No decorations, no cake, not even a simple happy birthday that didn't feel rushed. The sting of being invisible was sharp, like a sudden winter wind biting through your coat. I remember sitting on my bed that night, holding a worn-out teddy bear Lily had abandoned years before, and trying not to cry. My hands shook as I clutched it tighter, feeling the soft fur press into my palms. That bear, silly as it seemed, became my anchor, the one thing that didn't forget me. My grandmother noticed. She had always been quiet, watching life unfold with that soft, knowing smile. That night, she sat beside me on my bed, her knitting needles clicking softly in the dim light. "Emily," she said, "you have a gift for making people feel celebrated. Don't let them forget your light just because they can't see it. One day they'll notice, but until then, make your own magic." I held her words like a lifeline. In the years that followed, while I perfected every detail for Lily's birthdays, handmade invitations, perfectly themed cakes, surprise scavenger hunts, I began to notice a different feeling simmering inside me. It wasn't just resentment. It was determination. Every forgotten birthday, every overlooked smile, was shaping me. I learned to stand alone, to pour love and effort into things that mattered, and to cultivate patience, not just for others, but for the day I would finally honor myself. By the time I was 16, I made a quiet but decisive promise. I will not let this define me forever. I will create something for me, too. And when the time comes, they will see. That promise, small and fragile then, became the seed of the fire I carry today. After high school, I left our small town without looking back. I traded the quiet streets where birthdays were forgotten for the relentless pulse of New York City. Every step I took felt like a reclamation of myself, my name, my choices, my worth. I rented a tiny apartment, the kind where the heating barely worked and the bathroom smelled faintly of mildew, and I told myself that this was where I would start over. It wasn't easy. My first weeks were a blur of part-time jobs and long nights, working in a boutique that smelled of leather and perfume, just to pay rent. I would come home exhausted, my hands raw from folding clothes or packaging orders, yet I carried a small notebook with me everywhere. It had ideas, sketches, dreams, the beginnings of a plan I was too scared to voice aloud. It was in that notebook that I first sketched the idea for a small event planning business. Not the huge, magazine-perfect parties I'd orchestrated for Lily, but something uniquely mine. Intimate, elegant, unforgettable in ways that carried meaning, not just decoration. I was lucky to meet Vanessa Green, a seasoned event manager who saw more than just a timid girl with a notebook. She offered me a chance to intern, guiding me patiently through logistics, client interactions, and budgeting. Vanessa didn't just teach me the mechanics. She taught me confidence. "Emily," she said once as we reviewed a client's birthday plan, "people don't remember the cake or the balloons. They remember the feeling. And you have a way of making people feel remembered."
Don't hide that.
I held her words like armor as I built my fledgling business, often working through nights so long I forgot whether the sun had risen. The first real break came unexpectedly. A small client, a local boutique owner, asked me to plan a launch party. I went all out, drawing on every memory of Lily's birthdays and every skill I had quietly honed. The night of the event, I watched the crowd laughing, glasses clinking, lights reflecting off the carefully chosen decor. It hit me then. I had created magic. For me, and for others who mattered. From there, opportunities multiplied. One successful launch led to another. Word of mouth turned into contracts I could never have imagined back in that cramped kitchen in my hometown. With every step forward, I carefully kept my family in the dark. They assumed I was doing okay in the city, but they had no idea that I was thriving, building something they had once overlooked in me. I wasn't just planning parties anymore. I was building independence, resilience, and a life that belonged entirely to me. Every success, no matter how small, was a quiet victory over the years of being forgotten, of being overlooked. And while I still thought of Lily and the family I had loved despite everything, I knew one day the scales would tip. One day, they would see not just the girl who planned birthdays, but the woman who made her own unforgettable story. It all started with a casual invitation from my mother, a family dinner, just to catch up. I almost declined. Almost. But the spark of possibility, the one I had nursed quietly all these years, urged me to say yes. I arrived in a sleek navy dress, the fabric hugging me in all the right ways, my heels clicking confidently on the marble floor of the upscale restaurant. My hair was perfectly styled, and my makeup was subtle, but I felt an invisible armor in every detail. They didn't recognize me at first. My parents, who once barely noticed me, stared in mild confusion. Lily's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I smiled, polite but sharp, letting the silence stretch for a moment longer than it needed. The table was beautifully set, but not in the way they were used to, no over-the-top decorations or frivolous fuss. Instead, every detail reflected intention, elegance, and thought, from the crystal glasses to the delicate, personalized menu I had arranged months in advance. "Emily, you look different," my mother finally managed, voice wavering between pride and disbelief. Lily's eyes flickered nervously around the table. I laughed softly, the sound even controlled. "I like to think I've grown," I said, letting the words linger like a whisper carrying weight. As the dinner progressed, I let them marvel silently. I spoke of my career, not the vague, "I'm doing okay in the city" line I'd given them before, but the real picture. My event planning company thriving in New York, my clients, my team, the awards I'd quietly won. I casually mentioned my office downtown, then leaned back, watching their reactions. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's hands fidgeted with her napkin. And Lily's eyes were wide, almost incredulous. Finally, I delivered the reveal that mattered most. "I also bought my own apartment," I said, letting my hand glide over the polished wood of my chair, fully paid, in a neighborhood I love. And yes, I handle my finances, investments, and clients personally. I let that sit for a moment. "I'm not just doing okay, Mother. I've built a life I'm proud of. A life I created without waiting for anyone to remember me." The room went quiet. Disbelief.
Shame.
A flicker of admiration, though none would admit it aloud. My mother's eyes glistened, but she looked away. My father's expression shifted from irritation to a dawning recognition, the sort that comes when reality can no longer be denied. Lily finally spoke, her voice small. You really did all this? I nodded, a small, controlled smile playing on my lips. I did. And I've loved every minute of growing into this person. I paused, letting my gaze sweep the table. But don't think for a second that I built this for your approval. I built it for me. For the years I was overlooked, the birthdays I spent planning for everyone else, and the moments I had to be invisible. I don't need validation anymore, just acknowledgement. I could see it all in their faces. The realization that the girl they once ignored had become a woman they could neither overlook nor dismiss. And in that moment, I felt something powerful. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Triumph. The quiet, unshakable triumph of a decade of patience, planning, and persistence. For the first time in years, I wasn't just Emily Carter, the girl who planned birthdays. I was Emily Carter, the woman who made her own unforgettable story. For the first time in my life, I sat at the table with the upper hand. The quiet authority I had built over the years wasn't loud or aggressive. It was steady, unshakable, the kind that comes from knowing your own worth. They had expected me to be the same overlooked girl, meek and pliable. Instead, they were faced with someone who had not only survived being forgotten, but had thrived. I've told you the truth about my life. I began, letting my gaze settle on each of them in turn. And now we have a choice. We can continue in old patterns, ignore, dismiss, expect me to be invisible, or we can try to change. But any change has conditions. My voice was calm, yet firm, carrying the weight of years spent being overlooked. My mother shifted nervously, and I let her weight a beat. First, acknowledgement. You need to see me for who I am, not who you expect me to be. That means no more brushing aside my achievements or pretending my life isn't important. I turned to my father. Second, accountability. You've carried patterns that dismiss the people around you, and it's time to stop. Respect others' boundaries, listen, and support growth instead of controlling it. Then I looked at Lily. Third, responsibility for your own growth. You've always lived in my shadow, even unintentionally. It's time you step into your own light. Plan your own milestones, celebrate yourself, and stop relying on others to define your worth. I didn't pause to soften the edges. And lastly, I added, no one here gets a free pass for toxic habits. If we're moving forward, it's with honesty, respect, and effort. I care about you all, but I won't bend back into the roles I once played for 10 years. That chapter is closed. There was silence for a long moment, the kind of silence that fills a room with tension and possibility. Then, slowly, my mother's eyes softened, a hesitant smile breaking through. My father exhaled, a little of the weight leaving his shoulders. Lily's face mirrored a mixture of guilt and awe. They were absorbing the gravity of my words, the authority that wasn't born overnight but carved through years of patience and resilience. It felt liberating, this shift. I realized that power didn't have to mean punishment. It didn't have to be about revenge or making them suffer. True power came from clarity, boundaries, and the courage to define your own life on your terms. I had grown into someone who could care deeply while standing firm, someone who could forgive without forgetting, someone who could demand respect while offering compassion. For the first time, I truly understood my grandmother's words, make your own magic. I wasn't just celebrating myself anymore. I was creating a new dynamic, one that ensured the respect I deserved and the growth they needed. And as I looked around the table at my family, still stunned, still adjusting, still realizing, the quiet, undeniable truth settled in. The balance had shifted. For the first time, the overlooked girl had the pen in her hand, writing the rules for the rest of us. The weeks after that dinner felt like watching a slow sunrise. Change doesn't happen all at once, and I could see that my family was taking tentative steps toward the conditions I had set. My mother began sending small, thoughtful messages, not just on my birthday, but random notes that acknowledged my achievements, my growth. My father started listening in ways he hadn't before, asking questions instead of offering judgment, letting me lead conversations about my life without interruption. And Lily, She began carving out her own milestones, sharing little victories she had once buried beneath my shadow. I watched them evolve, and it felt surprisingly warm. I realized that my power wasn't just in revealing my success or enforcing boundaries, it was in showing them what was possible when someone refuses to be overlooked. I felt pride, not arrogance. Satisfaction, not revenge. And through it all, I never stopped remembering the girl I had been, the one who planned birthdays for others while hers were forgotten. That girl had carried me here, and I honored her by living fully and unapologetically. One evening, as I unpacked a gift Lily had sent, a delicate, hand-painted music box, I felt the weight of the past lift slightly. I wound it up, and the soft, tinkling notes filled the apartment, a tiny echo of the birthday celebrations I had orchestrated for her for so many years. But this time, it wasn't a reminder of being overlooked. It was a celebration of resilience, of growth, of a life finally claimed. My grandmother's words whispered back to me in that moment, "Make your own magic." I had done it. Sitting on the balcony, city lights stretching endlessly before me, I thought about how far I had come. The overlooked Emily, the girl with shaky hands and a lump in her throat, had transformed into a woman who could define her own worth, who could demand respect, and who could love without sacrificing herself. I had rewritten my story, not by erasing the past, but by embracing it, learning from it, and building a life that was undeniably mine. And as I closed my eyes, breathing in the night air, I whispered to myself, with the quiet certainty of someone who knows her own strength, I am no longer the girl who waits for recognition. I am the woman who makes herself unforgettable.